When you're rebuilding in Dynasty Fantasy Football, it can feel like you always need to trade players away, trying to get as much draft capital as possible for upcoming rookie drafts. But today, I want to break down 5 players that you should not trade away here in the 2025 fantasy football season. All right, let's start the video with Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets. He has missed the last 2 games due to injury, coming off of a bye week, questionable going into week 10 of the season. And I feel like right now, in terms of dynasty outlook for Garrett Wilson, we just still have this big question mark, like, what is the future of the Jets? What is the future in terms of their quarterback? And overall, just remember, Garrett Wilson is one of these players where the talent totally outweighs the situation at hand. And yeah, it feels like the Jets are tanking right now after the trade deadline fire sale they had, but they are loaded with upcoming NFL draft picks, and more than likely, they are going to bring in a young quarterback in one of the next coming NFL drafts. So Wilson will be the vocal point of the offense moving forward, and I mean, he already is the vocal point of the offense right now as well, right? So do not panic sell on Garrett Wilson. Although you could probably get a first-round pick for Garrett Wilson right now, he is still a corner piece in Dynasty at the wide receiver position. Even in a rebuild, just don't forget you need cornerstone pieces to build around. You don't have to completely tank and just have complete nobodies across your roster. You still want good players on your roster, and Garrett Wilson is always a player that contending teams will come after. You look at on the year so far, he has double-digit fantasy points, in 4 out of 6 games that he has played. 16.6 fantasy points per game, which is 8th amongst all wide receivers, and that is despite him missing 2 games and having his bye week already. And on top of that, he's first in route participation amongst all wide receivers, number 2 in target share, and number 6 in first read targets amongst all wide receivers. Once again, with missing 2 games and having his bye week already, he is an elite fantasy football wide receiver at the end of the day. Despite what's going on with the Jets organization, despite who the quarterback is, Garrett Wilson is still a player that you do not want to trade away no matter what. And right now, with everything going on, the knee issue, all the stuff going on with the Jets, Justin Fields, all these question marks, right? You are selling him at a low value. So the best thing that you can do for your dynasty roster is just hold on to him for the time being. Next up, let's talk about another young wide receiver. That is Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. And once again, Zay Flowers is one of these players that contending teams will always kind of come after because he's always a solid flex option who has a very safe floor on a week-to-week basis. Now, let's look at a couple of things with Zay Flowers. He's under contract till 2026 with the Ravens, still on that rookie deal, but the way his contract breaks down, it is very likely he's going to be extended in this coming offseason if the Ravens are going to extend Zay Flowers, which I don't really feel like there's any reason that they wouldn't. I don't think he's going to demand like top wide receiver market money. I think they can probably come to a pretty good deal with Zay Flowers and keep him in the same role that he's had with this Ravens offense, and that means he is tied to Lamar Jackson until further notice, which is always a big thing for the long term with good wide receivers. What quarterback are they tied to? He's always going to be a solid flex option that you can rely on. Like I said, the floor is always safe with Zay Flowers, even if kind of the nature of this offense does cap his ceiling at the end of the day. We look on the season so far here in 2025. Double-digit fantasy points in 6 out of 8 games on the year. May lack that total upside, like I've been saying, but ultimately has had 13.4 fantasy points per game on the season thus far. And he may, as the season starts to progress here, feel like an easy player to flip to a contender for a draft pick, but I'm not entirely sure every contender out there is going to want to give up a first rounder for Zay Flowers. And at the end of the day, that is what he is worth in my eyes. So I just don't really think you should go out, try and move him, and only net like a second round selection or a third round selection in an upcoming rookie draft. Now, with all the players we're talking about today, there's always a price that you can always sell a player at, right? There's if someone's willing to overpay, and there's always trade packages that may include, different players, different draft picks. There's always a correct price, right? But if we're just looking at straight up swaps for draft picks, Zay Flowers kind of in this gray area. Like, are you actually going to get a first rounder for him, or is it going to be something later? And I don't think he's worth something later. I think it's just better to hold on to him on your guys' fantasy rosters, because so many guys out there in dynasty leagues are playing in 3 wide receiver formats, multiple flex formats. You need players like Zay Flowers available on a week-to-week basis to fill in some of those gaps. Except let's talk about a young tight end. That's Oronde Gadsden of the LA Chargers. And this is a player who's been the subject of a lot of dynasty trades lately. And don't get me wrong, it's always okay to try to capitalize on success. Might not be a bad idea to try and move him if you can get the right price here. And I know like a lot of people are playing the market. We're seeing that early success or flipping him for draft picks, things like that. And he's a good example of a player in dynasty formats where it does make some sense to try and move him right now. But generally speaking, this is the exact type of player in dynasty, whether you're rebuilding or contending, that you want to hold on to. He looks like a true cornerstone piece at the tight end position. And so many guys out there in dynasty formats are playing in tight end premium leagues. And I think, with the early success we're already seeing out of Gadsden, it is only implicating that he's going to have future success as well. And once again, he's tied to Justin Herbert in a very good offense. We look on the season so far over the last 4 games, which are the games where Gadsden has had 75% or more snaps played. He's at 11.8 or more fantasy points, 2 touchdowns in that stretch, 5 or more targets in every game, and at least 5 catches in all of those games. And that has ranked him as the tight end 11 overall in both half and full PPR in fantasy football right now. He's top 10 amongst all tight ends in air yards, deep targets, red zone targets, receptions, receiving yards, fantasy points per game, and expected fantasy points per game. So this is one of those moments. Don't get me wrong. I get it, guys. If you're out there playing the market, that's your thing. You're just trying to capitalize on as many draft selections as you can get. I'm not going to talk you out of it if you're rebuilding that way. But generally, this is a player that I really think we should just hold on to if you own him and if you're rebuilding. He could be a true cornerstone dynasty piece who's still on the first year of his rookie deal. This is exactly what most of you guys out there want when you're looking at dynasty assets. Next up, let's talk about Jayden Daniels at the quarterback position. This is another player who's popping up as the subject of a lot of dynasty trades at the moment. Rebuilders and contenders are both in the market currently for Jayden Daniels, but I feel like overall it's just a bad time to sell Jayden Daniels, even if you're a rebuilder. I mean, this is a high caliber player at the quarterback position. Most of you guys out there playing in Superflex formats when it comes to dynasty, he's a very, very valuable player, but we're not selling him anywhere near the top of his value. And I am never a fan of that. Never a fan of selling a player at an all-time low when they're dealing with a serious injury like Jayden Daniels is. Now, if you're trying to buy him, that's a different story. I think it might be a good time to try and buy him, but that's not exactly what we're talking about today. And right now, the injury, it's a little bit murky here. He may or may not end up on IR. We might actually see him play again this year. I would hope that the Commanders just shut him down for the year, give him a whole, off season to rest and everything, but we'll see what happens. Either way, if you trade him right now, you're just not selling him at his true value. So for me, it makes a lot more sense just to hold Jayden Daniels for the long term and kind of ride the wave of what's to come and look for success in the upcoming fantasy season, NFL season. And we look on the 2025 season, he still has had 17 or more fantasy points per game this year, except in week 9, which was a game he got hurt, where he had 16.2 fantasy points and was on pace for 17 or more fantasy points. So 19.7 or more fantasy points in 3 out of 6 games that he played in this year, and he's averaged 18.9 fantasy points per game on the season. So still a very, very good option at the quarterback position, and he was still a rushing threat here in the 2025 season, even though at times it didn't exactly feel like that. Even just coming off of this past week and already missing games due to injury this season, top 10 in total carry share for all quarterbacks, top 10 in carries per game, designed runs per game, scrambles per game, yards per carry, and rushing touchdowns amongst all quarterbacks. And some of those metrics, he was number 1 overall in. So Jayden Daniels, when he comes back next year, which is what I'm hoping, or maybe this season, whatever it's going to be, he is still going to be an elite quarterback when it comes to fantasy football because he's always going to have that rushing upside. And the point here is don't sell him. You're selling him at a serious all-time low coming off of what's a really, really tough injury. So ultimately, even if you're rebuilding, just hold on to JD5. I think that's going to suit you guys much better in the long term as opposed to trying to sell him right now in the short term. Then last but not least, let's talk about a rookie running back. That's TreVeyon Henderson of the New England Patriots. And now I know a lot of rebuilders out there probably aren't going to be even considering moving a player like Henderson, but I still think there's some contenders, or a lot of contenders, that may be trying to buy low on TreVeyon Henderson as the season starts to conclude here. Or if he has a breakout game, they might go trying to move serious pieces for TreVeyon Henderson. And ultimately, if you're a rebuilder, just quit panicking on Henderson. Sometimes it takes rookies time to kind of hit their stride, get acclimated to the NFL. And I still personally believe in TreVeyon Henderson. And as of the time I'm recording this, Ramondre Stevenson, questionable for week 10, still hurt, still not practicing. We'll see how that shakes out. And yeah, last week we saw no Ramondre Stevenson, and it was kind of disappointing. You know, Terrell Jennings had 12 touches, scored a touchdown, but Henderson still had 18 total touches, and this is one of the pass-heaviest teams in the entire NFL right now, and the Falcons kept that game script competitive, to which we saw the Patriots needed to continue to throw the football throughout that game. And some encouraging news is that we have had some loose reports out there that Henderson is cleaning up and improving in pass protection, which is what I really believe has limited his snaps this year and kept him off the field, is the fact that Ramondre Stevenson is a better pass protector than Henderson. But hopefully that's true, and hopefully that helps Henderson as the season progresses. But the main thing here is that he has an amazing upcoming schedule for the rest of the year. You should just try and wait for a potential breakout game if you're actually going to try and move Henderson. But I think ultimately just hold him, try and make him part of your roster long term, because I think weeks 10 through 17 of the season are really going to define what TreVeyon Henderson could actually be with the Patriots for the upcoming years. He only faces, at the time of recording this could change over the next couple of weeks, but as of right now, for the remainder of the season, he only faces bottom 10 units in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back position in terms of his upcoming matchups. Week 10, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of people think of this team like tough run defense, and they are. They're good at stopping the run. They don't give up a lot of rushing yards, but ultimately they're a bottom 10 unit in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back position, and they give up a lot of receptions and receiving yards to the running back position. Then he gets the Jets, the Bengals, the Giants. The Bengals and Giants back-to-back is crazy. Then a bye week, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, then the Jets again. These are some of the very worst teams in terms of fantasy points allowed to the running back position. This is an amazing schedule, and that's why I say some contenders might come knocking after one or two of these games and say, hey, I'm interested. I might actually want to buy Henderson for a better value. So don't sell him right now. It's just not a good time. And ultimately, once again, I don't think we've really seen what TreVeyon Henderson is going to be, and we will certainly get a good idea over the next couple weeks. So point being, just be patient, hold on to Henderson. Right now is not the time to try and sell him. There you guys have it. There are 5 players that if I'm rebuilding in Dynasty Fantasy Football, I am not trading at the moment. Don't forget, we are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers here on the channel, so do us a huge favor. If you're into Dynasty Fantasy Football content, hit that subscribe button down below. And if you want to check out more of the Dynasty content we've put together here on the season, you can check out the playlist when it pops up on the screen.